In this video, we'll be demonstrating the differences between FieldAgent Desktop and FieldAgent Web in viewing image layers and being able to manipulate what we see within those layers. We're starting with the FieldAgent Web app, and I've already drilled into the field and selected the mosaic that I want to work with. And all I have to do is double click right here, and it's going to take me into the mosaic details, and here I can do a number of different things. The first thing that I can do is, if I want to, I can change the name. I'm going to leave it well enough alone. I can display this differently between imagery and zone management. And when I click on zone management, it does take just a very short minute for it to produce management zones for you. And if you want to export that information out, you can go down to the bottom here and click on the export here, and you'll export it out as a TIFF file. All right. So let's go back to our imagery. Now, by default, when you come in here, there are a number of bins that are selected. I believe on the web it's generally set to 20 bins. I've already moved mine down to 5 bins, but you can adjust that, and when you do so, it will adjust the view that we have very dynamically and very quickly. I'm going to go back to 5 bins, but you can go up to 20 if you want to. 5 bins is generally the standard for most apps. Then down here we can see where our values fall within the scale. Now, one thing I want to point out is that when you're using the standard NDVI values in FieldAgent and a number of other apps, you're going to usually get a color scale between red and green. And one thing I want to point out is red does not necessarily mean that there is a problem. Red just means that the value in that area is lower than the other values, because you can see on my scale here, my red runs, all the way basically from the end all the way over to the far side of the scale. That's a long ways to cover for red, and that doesn't mean that all that is, something's physically wrong there. It just means that the values that are red are lower than the values that are orange or yellow or the other values of greens. All right, so again, just something to kind of keep in mind when you're looking at this. The other thing you can do is you can use this slide bar to remove certain portions of those values that you deem not necessary. Take, for example, I want to get rid of like all the exposed dirt or something like that in my imagery. And just by sliding that slide bar over farther into the positive range, it's removing that information. And I can move it back. I can use the same thing from the green side and remove information from my field. So again, just a tool that one can use to kind of fine-tune what you're looking at. We can also look at this as an equal area, so each color basically is the same number of acreages. If I go to equal spacing, now out of the 5 bins that I have, each bin is the same spacing on the scale. And you can see that it shows me a fairly green field when I do that. So not nearly as much detail, but again, showing a very healthy field just as much as this is showing a very healthy field. I can set my color scales. I have the standard red to green. I have a bunch of different ones that we can look at here. I'm not going to go through all of them. Grayscale is available for you if that's something that may be easier for you to look at. But there's a number of different values that you can choose for that. You can also choose clipped and unclipped. The difference between the unclipped is it shows all the mosaic portions outside of the field boundary. Generally, those don't mean a whole lot to a number of people, so just an option for you to be able to show that. And then finally, we can set the opacity. So if we were stacking images on top of each other, we'd have the ability to do that here. We're not going to be discussing that in today's video. And then if you want to download the file, we have the download file right here. You can just simply click on that button. It's going to download it as a TIFF file. Let's go into FieldAgent Desktop here then. You can see that my mosaic here looks similar because it's the exact same field just in FieldAgent Desktop than it did in the last video that we're looking at. Now there's some other things that we can do in FieldAgent Desktop that are that's not available in FieldAgent Web. So once we've selected the mosaic, we have the toolbox here. And inside the toolbox, we have the ability, again, just like we did in the web, to use that slide bar to remove out the values that we don't want. And again, it can work from both sides. We can look at it from equal area and equal spacing. We can set the number of bins. The default value for bins in FieldAgent Desktop is 5. The default value for Ben's and FieldAgent Web is 20. We can also change our color of the map from red to green to grayscale, blues, and reds. So not as many options in that status or that capability as it would be in the web app, but nonetheless we do have the ability to make those changes. The other thing that we have here is some statistics for you to look at, where these are the average values within the field. So again, please note that just because I have red in my field doesn't mean that that red is bad. My average is 0.79. That's a high average, especially for early July. My minimum is a 0.7. That's a fairly good minimum. And then my max is 0.85. So again, some really nice values to look at in here. And when I click on that, it gave me an error because I didn't have a shapefile selected here. And if I click on that shapefile and then click on the average, then it's going to display the average in the middle of that shapefile. I can display the min and the max for that whole shapefile if I want to. Now notice that these numbers are slightly different than what you're seeing over here because these numbers right here represent just what's inside of the shapefile. These numbers over here represent the entire field. All right, let's turn that off and let's turn off the shapefile. And then the other thing I can do in here is I can generate a management zone. Just like we did in FieldAgent Web, we do have the ability to create a management zone in here, and we can adjust the details of it. I'm going to leave the defaults alone and click on Generate. And it takes just a minute for it to generate, and how long it takes is determined by the size of the field, the amount of data that you have. So it's a pretty small field. It was only 35 acres, and it didn't take all that long for it to produce and display the information. I can then export this out as a shapefile, which then can be imported into a number of different management tools. If you have any questions about using FieldAgent Desktop or FieldAgent Web and manipulating the map layers, please feel free to reach out to us at support@sentera.com. You can also call us by calling 612-204-2000, or you can view us on the web by going to sentera.com and clicking on support.